These are the times that try men.
To me, this is not just another nation. It is not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as three men. Three men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Eye of the Tiger. I don't even know what that means right now, but I know it's 9:02 in the morning on this particular morning. It's July 10th. Welcome back to another edition of Real News. My name is Mr. Henry. David Sean Thompson on the other side there. We'll get to him in just a second. How are you doing on this Friday morning? Jam-packed show today for you. Major things to go over, major updates. Going to have a lot of fun. Going to hopefully get some commentary from y'all from the chat section. I got the unified chat stream going over here on this screen. I got the camera going on this stream. We also have the call-in number for today if you guys want to call and join in on us. I'm throwing this on Shine right now. Last minute, I don't even know if he knew I was doing this, but 615-807-0619. That's 615-807-0619. Let's make it a Friday thing, man. At any point in this show, whenever you want to. I don't care if you interrupt me or not. I'm the only one that's going to hear this phone call, so it's going to be an awkward transition. But give me a call at that number, 615-807-0619. I will hear you. We'll bring you on the program. You can talk about literally anything you want to talk about. Keep it within the confines of a normal radio program. We're watching words and language and that stuff. But outside of that, I don't really care what topic you bring up, man. We'll talk about it. That's part of why I want to do what we're doing right now for the greatest audience of the nation appreciation segment here as well. Just trying to get a feel where you're at, what you're struggling with, how you're feeling this morning, what you need help with, where you're at psychologically. What stories are y'all following? This is actually something, before I introduce my boy Shine, this is actually something I was not struggling with last night, but trying to figure out last night. There was just like a myriad of topics all over the place. There's a topic over here and a topic over there and a story over here and a story over there. And just like, I don't know if any of it fit together, and it's weird weaving the show together and all this other kind of nonsense, man. So let me know where you're at, what you're studying, what you're paying attention to. What books are you reading? Are y'all into novels right now? Or are you into something else? My brother turned me on to a book entitled The Coddling of the American Mind over the July 4th weekend, and I've been trying to pour into that as much as I can recently, especially for the times currently that we're going through right now, cancel culture and all that, man. Coddling of the American Mind is a very, very interesting one. Essentially saying that we've sort of incentivized this victim mentality, and it's not even just virtue signaling. It's like when you incentivize victim mentality to some extent, then you can't really be too surprised with the results you get now, can you? And it's scientific sense speaking. Anyways, check that book out if you're so inclined to do so. My name is Mr. Henry. David Sean Thompson, buddy, how are you doing on your end this morning?
Muted. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Hey, I want to play too, Grant. Let's talk. I want to talk about books. We should talk about books more often.
Yeah. Like
what is everybody, part of the greatest audience in the nation appreciation? Because I'm like spinning like 4 plates in the air. I'm trying to read this book, Essentialism. Oh, you can't see it on the phone, but Essentialism by Greg McKeown, or whatever. It's that people in our company turned me on to. Yeah. Sounds like a great book. I just reordered a book that I haven't read in 10 years called Chronicles of the Tao. It's a really cool, like, narrative anti-hero story. Pretty cool. And then I'm also reading a book that our friend Nathan told me about Talleyrand. And actually, he gave it to me to borrow. And he was a diplomat under Napoleon. Pretty interesting guy. And also Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. I'm kind of like trying to like read all those things at the same time, get them all done before maybe end of September or something like that.
Nathan, by the way, the guy he just mentioned, one of the most well-read. It's a terrible English sentence. He reads a lot. The guy knows what he's talking about.
He likes the books.
He likes the books. He likes the books. Eh?
He has many leather-bound books.
He does have many leather
He
bound
does
books.
have many. He collects them. But anyway, I thought, hey, but tying that all in, I think I was struggling the same with you. Like, what is the theme? What should we talk about the next day?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a little bit of it, just being real. I think the kind of vibe that we've been in for the past 7-8 weeks has been a little bit exhausting, and there's been nothing this week to propel the high energy forward. I mean, we had 4th of July last weekend. That was kind of contentious / celebratory, but there hasn't been like a lot of flashpoints this week.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And as we wind down to the end of this week, instead of people thinking about, riots this weekend or stuff I'm angry about, I think people are thinking, man, I'm going to go have some fun this weekend. I think that's what everyone's thinking about. Even people in news, people who write, people who do YouTube and things like that. And I think we're just in the same space. There are some cool things to talk about, but it's just not at the same temperature. Temperature's dropped a little bit.
Right.
That doesn't mean things are less interesting. It just means we're not on that same vibe, which is probably a good thing. It's probably good. So. Everyone's calming down a little bit.
I think so, man. And it's not. Yeah, I think you're right, man. It's not even necessarily that people become jaded to it. It's just not to the level of extreme that it was before. Which is, you're exactly right. I think that's exactly what people are needing right now. It does mean that there's a few headlines that are maybe not getting some of the coverage that you would normally expect them to get. But, it is what it is. One of them in particular, you'll see today, Don Lemon's literal heresy. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But CNN just went ahead and jumped that religious shark and said, you know what? Let's just forget about actually being biblically accurate or even attempting to get him in anywhere near that ballpark of one of the basic Christian precepts that pretty much everybody for the last 2,000 plus years have actually understood. Let's just not even worry about that. Just gloss over it. Actually, let's not even gloss over it. Let's use the counter argument to make a point. Let's use the non-truth to make a point that by way of analogy. That's all I'm going to tease with it right now. Let's get into the local stories. By the way, like I said, Unified Chat, Real News. Unified Chat is on the screen. So whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Twitch, whether you're on, I don't care, out of the 50 different platforms that we're broadcasting this thing on right now, wherever you're following, I'll be able to follow your comments. RealNewsRadio.live is the best way to follow that. Quick update here. Met with our guy Jim yesterday. He's the attorney that's putting on the ballot initiative here in Nashville. His ballot initiative, Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act for Good Government. The number 4, goodgovernment.com is the best way you're going to be able to find information on this. Now, I'll tell you all right now, the property tax is the first headline you're going to see up there. For those that don't know, Nashville just passed a 34%. It was a proposed 32% property tax increase. We bumped that up to 34 because why not? 34% property tax increase is what we got around here. This Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act will limit that down to just 2%. And a very interesting thing, another thing that does, it will limit it to 2% every year going forward without putting the issue on a referendum. Meaning, if Metro government, Metro Council wants to increase the property tax anything beyond 2%, they have to get the people's direct consent to do so, i.e. registered voters in Davidson County. But whatever, it's still the people's consent, the people that they're representing, yeah? This also has a provision in there talking about no giveaway of our parks, greenways, or public lands. No giveaways of our parks or greenways or public land. A voter referendum shall be required for transfer of interest in real properties value over $5 million or for leases exceeding 20 years commencing after January 1st, 2020. And yes, all these dates are accurate. I know that sounds strange, like we're sort of like retroactive application here or something, but this stuff isn't in effect yet. Third thing that this might do is the issuance of bonds has the thing to do with that. All bonds issued or guaranteed after January 1st, 2020, exceeding $15 million for a specific project must be approved by voter referendum. Now, importantly, that excludes your obvious things: educational classrooms, public libraries, public health buildings, police and fire stations, charter provided facilities, yada, yada. But those other things beyond $15 million, I don't know.
You mean there are exceptions for things government's supposed to be providing?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, right. Yeah. Maybe if, like, I don't know, if you're hauling a big soccer stadium in town or something, you want a bunch of folks to pay for that. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe it's not that point.
Yeah, I don't think soccer is an essential service of government. I don't think.
You hold your tongue, David.
I mean, I don't know the Constitution by heart, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't say must provide for the common soccer, you know?
It's Article 9, Clause 5. It's a subsection. Government must provide for MLS teams. Here's another one that it deals with here is failed promises. Here, it hits it on the head. Talking about if a professional sport team leaves Nashville or ceases playing professional games, any professional sports team for more than 24 months, all facilities related to commercial development shall revert to the people. And finally, this open records portion is just basically dealing with any public instrumentalities under Title VII receiving more than $250,000. We just want transparency. We just want to be able to see what's going on. The people basically want to know what their money is being used for. Pretty simple stuff. Seems pretty simple stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff is not just about the property tax issue. This thing is much, much bigger than that. It does fantastic things from top to bottom. And the reason why I'm pitching it on a program like this, Real News, we have a lot of Middle Tennessee listeners. Jonathan, Amy, Eric. I actually see Nick in here right now. What's up, Nick? My other guy, John Chandler. We have a bunch of Middle Tennessee listeners, but we also have a whole bunch of East Tennessee listeners as well. The reason why I'm pitching it on a program like this with East Tennessee listeners is just to show y'all, listen, this could be precedent-setting material. And I mean in a legal sense, but possibly most importantly, I mean in like an Overton window shifting sense. If some folks from Knoxville, say Kincannon or whoever, get wind that something like this is picking up steam. You hear what I'm saying? If they get wind that there's actually some movement on this, especially if they get wind come near December and they see this thing has actually been put on the ballot, and especially if something actually happens in December with this vote, I'm telling y'all, other cities around the state are going to start to recognize, like, goodness gracious, man, is there a shifting in tide? Is fiscal conservatism returning to major cities in Tennessee again? That would be a novel concept, wouldn't it? Maybe we should do a thing where we should worry about spending first. Maybe we don't have a revenue problem in Nashville. Maybe we have a spending problem in Nashville. Maybe there's a lot of other cities that are a similar way. Maybe this has to do with an Overton window shift and a policy concern even more than it probably has to do with the direct property tax at hand. That's why I'm blowing it up a little bit here. And I'm not trying to be too bombastic, but I sincerely believe number4goodgovernment.com, number4goodgovernment.com, the stuff that's being worked on here in Nashville could set precedent for the rest of the state, at least by way of conversations you can have. Last pitch I'll make for this, then I'll get on with the real stuff. What we really need y'all's help with right now, anybody that you know that is a registered voter in Davidson County, get them that information. Get them that website. If you're in Davidson County, man, print a couple of these things off and go to your cul-de-sacs. Go door to door. Hit up your friends and family, whatever. Say, sign this real quick. We need these signatures. Super simple. It's a piece of paper you print off. 10 to 15 signatures on it. Fold in half. Slap a stamp on. Mail it back to us. We'll take care of the rest. We're looking for somewhere between, 8 and 10,000 signatures is what we're shooting for. We'd like to see even more than that. That's what we're going for, though. Have about 30 days left to get that. We're doing great so far. We're doing great so far, just so everybody knows. Anyways, moving on. Local stories here. Let me know how you feel about this in the comment section, because this is I don't even know the best way to describe this, Sean. This is maybe the long time coming, maybe the proper way to be done. I don't know. There's a lot of feelings surrounding this next headline from WBIR. State Capitol Commission voted Thursday to move the Confederate general and KKK leader's bust to Tennessee State Museum. Now, that's their headline, not mine. Okay, I'm just saying you're seeing it in front of your face right now. Sean's pulling this up. State Capitol Commission voted 9-2 Thursday to remove the bust of Confederate General and Ku Klux Klan leader Nathan Bedford Forrest from the state Capitol building. In a move to support racial reconciliation, the State Capitol Commission, which oversees monuments in the Capitol complex, voted to move the bust to the Tennessee State Museum in Nashville. Commissioner said it's important for people to see Tennessee's history in full context without erasing history. Now, this is what you're about to see in the show notes portion of this with the highlights doesn't necessarily follow with the way that the story was printed. WBR and other publications like to grab quotes from Governor Lee and from Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs and from Tim Burchett and just throw them all through. It reads better. They throw them all throughout the article. To create and spin the narrative, to tell the story, I think it's possibly, arguably more important to get these leaders' opinions ahead of time. So know what the situation is. Now you get the factual information. The TLDR has been put out there. 9-2 vote. They're moving Nathan Bedford Forrest somewhere else, to a museum. Now, Governor Lee's response to this was, quote, I commend members of the State Capitol Commission for taking up the Nathan Bedford Forrest bust issue and arriving at a thoughtful resolution that provides important historical context for the bust at the State Museum. Scripture implores us to live in peaceful and unity. That's a weird way. I think I meant in peace and unity, but whatever. In peace and unity. And I believe today's actions reflect this and our commitment to remembering all parts of our past. Governor Lee went on Wednesday to say he wished to see the bus moved out of the Capitol, saying its current location created tension between heritage and symbolism, saying, quote, "Symbols matter. The most appropriate resolution," this is Lee still, "the most appropriate resolution for this bust is to put it in the appropriate context. What I would add now is that the most appropriate way to get the full context to this complicated life is to put the bust in the State Museum, where the very purpose is to see and understand our history." Now, in a fairly similar vein, Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs said this. He tweeted the following, quote, I applaud the State Capitol Commission's vote, which preserves the history of our state while promoting unity among all our citizens. Now, I should have put this in here. I just didn't have time to throw this in, or maybe I was just, maybe there's a bit of negligence set in or something. Congressman Burchett responded in a very similar way as well. He basically said, look, it was put up lawfully and it was taken down lawfully. Tennessee set the standard yet one more time for the way that this should be done appropriately. And to be fair, because I'm about to shift where this story is going from something that Richard just sent to our message. To be fair, that's exactly what I've been preaching the entire time as well. Real News followers have been preaching this as well, or have heard us talk about it this way. I have no problem in a representative republic if a bunch of folks want to get together and put a statue up. I don't personally see the need for it, frankly speaking. I think we kind of have a little bit of too much idealization going on anyways, and I think it turns into iconoclasm later on. That's neither here nor there. That's my personal feelings. It's a separate issue. But if you want to put something up, put it up, whatever. And if you want to take it down through the same democratically led process that was used to put it up. And in some sense, if not that exact sense, that is exactly what was done in the state of Tennessee. That's what Tim Burchett said. Congressman Burchett, I apologize. Said, hey, man, look, it was put up lawfully and it was taken down lawfully. It's a good standard to set. Now, importantly, to finalize the decision, the State Commission would also need to vote in favor of moving the bus. So there's a final step to this, but I don't know. Maybe it's going to happen. If the Historical Commission approves the measure, the next step would be to decide which historic figures would fill the 3 vacant seats. Now, somebody to you already is saying, what are you talking? What 3 vacant seats? This is what Richard just sent me a second ago. He said, FYI, they removed all military busts. He said, I heard the reason Forrest was placed there was for balance. A state senator said we need a Confederate if there's a Union officer. And that exact quote is actually in this WBIR article that Richard just sent to me. Now, that's where it's getting a little bit confusing for some people, because this whole thing started with just the Nathan Bedford Forrest stuff. And now here's the follow-up. If you're following along in the show notes, it's directly above that highlighted portion I just read. It says the commission also voted to approve an amendment to move the bust of Civil War hero and U.S. Navy Admiral David Farragut and Admiral Albert Gleaves from the Capitol to establish a Civil War exhibit in the museum. Now, I don't, frankly speaking, I'm not going to even try and give any commentary on my thoughts of that. I just don't know the history well enough. I don't know the history of these men well enough. I don't know the history of why those busts were put up there well enough. I don't know the history of what Richard is talking about. And the quote that was in there, you'll see it in the show notes a couple of sections down. The quote that Richard said, like, you know, one of the reasons why the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue was put up there is to say have a sort of a Confederate balance with the Union officers that were up there as well. Now, whatever. I'm just putting the information out there, see if I can get something stern in the comment section.
You don't know about Admiral Farragut?
Oh, I do. Don't get me wrong. I know the history of both these men. I'm just saying I don't. I
mean, he's the guy who said, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I mean, exactly. Like, he's like the stereotype. Him and, the guy from the Revolutionary War that I can't remember his name. Like, him and the guy from the Revolutionary War are like the Navy mythological lore people of the United States.
Absolutely. Here's one lesson
he was the Battle of Mobile Bay. I mean, like one of the most crucial battles of the Civil War for the Union.
One lesson I found when I was back in the radio days, Sean, was anytime I would try and pull up local stories, inevitably, there was somebody who was listening that knew way more about that topic than I did. So I try and just put the stuff out there, and at some point, somebody's going to fill me in with the stuff that they feel should be going on. Because I don't know, man. At this point, it's just this has been a long time coming, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like I'm trying not to have like a negative reaction to this.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to, but like I don't really like the idea that, well, if if we can't tell one part of history, we can't tell history at all. So let's move everybody. I don't like that. I don't like, and I also don't like. Okay, everyone agreed we should get rid of this one statue. Let's get rid of 2 more. Like, why can't we ever just do the one thing we're trying to do? Why can't we ever do that? I mean, the other day, I don't want to get off on a rabbit trail, but transportation bill, this is a great example. Transportation bill came out of committee at the federal government. It was $500 million. Between then and the floor vote, it went up to $1.5 trillion. Why can't we ever just do the one thing we're trying to do? Why can't we ever just do that? Why do we got to tack on extra stuff? Why do we do that? Why are we obsessed with doing, like, I don't know, it feels sneaky. It feels dishonest.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we all agree a Confederate general who organized against the carpetbaggers and terrorized black people, we should, like, get rid of his statue. Okay, we all agree. Now let's get rid of, like, one of the dudes who fought against him. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Couldn't they just make a new Farragut bust for this Civil War museum? Is there a limit on how many David Farragut busts there can be in the state of Tennessee or something like that? Have we reached our cap? They have to use that bust?
Right.
And are they going to take down Davy Crockett? Davy Crockett was a military leader. Not for this state. Maybe as a militia guy when he was very, very young, but not in official capacity. But he did fight in major battles and wars. And are we just against having statues now? Like, what is happening? I'm sorry. I just like, I went back and forth if I was going to have an emotional reaction about it. I'd love to hear what the chat thinks about it. But to me, it's...
No, because...
I'm kind of tired of modern art. I'm kind of tired of, like, shapes being art. I really like, Greek-style art where you have, like, stone men or animals or something, like realism. I like realism art. I'm really tired of abstract art, and I really don't want, like, abstract art around the Capitol. I would love, like, people that, like, who are the people whose shoulders we stand on, whether realistically or metaphorically. I would like those people at the Capitol. So it's easier to stand on their shoulders, basically, culturally speaking, metaphorically speaking. But anyway, sorry, that was just a little bit of a rant. I'm sorry about that. But I had an emotional reaction to that, and I felt like I should share that with everybody.
Well, no, I mean, that's what I hear you, man. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't necessarily know. I haven't looked into the history of how the other 2 individuals got placed up there, the purpose of placing them up there. I do know, I mean, the research I put into, I'm fairly certain it was 1978. 78 is when Nathan Bedford Forrest was placed up there during a time in Tennessee when there was a Democrat governor, a Democrat-controlled Senate and House. So one could reasonably make the argument it's a bunch of Democrats that put these folks up here, bro. So I'm not sure why it's Republicans that are defending them now, but that's neither here nor there. Jonathan said in Facebook a second ago, that's been a long time coming. It's a long story, but the bus location indirectly impacted people of color or even people of perceived color. Interesting. Said the fact that a Confederate general, regardless of the fact regardless of the facts of his later life, was placed in the epicenter of our state government, gave fervor to those who harbor malevolence in their hearts as supremacy and commit acts that are difficult to prove that deprive citizens of appropriate rights, including something so fundamental as education. The bus wasn't placed there until 1978. There you go. That's fine, though, if they want to move all the military buses to the Capitol. I'm fine with that as well. He says amendments are part of the legislative process. Now, that's the thing is I think everybody was totally on board with the Nathan Bedford Forrest, but the way that it's being presented right now without some kind of proper context, and maybe Richard just lended us some right now. Richard said in Facebook, he sent us a personal Facebook message, said initially the busts, I presume he means the busts of the Farragut and the others. Initially, those busts were made for a museum that wasn't finished. Since they had the bust already, they put them there at the Capitol. So I guess that's part of the context is like they were originally meant for a museum anyways. We're just going to move them into a museum because we have some type of Civil War exhibit in the museum that's about to be started is what WBIR is presenting on right now. But
yeah, it's totally okay that they had a mandate to basically had a mandate to do one person. Now they're taking 3 down. Yeah, that's totally okay for all these various anecdotal reasons. It's not okay to me. It's not okay to me. A Knoxvillian had a bust in the state capitol. And I know y'all from Middle Tennessee, maybe you're like, well, our Middle Tennessee representative was kind of a jerk, Nathan Bedford Forrest. But there was a guy from Knoxville. And, I'll add some context, and I don't mind doing it. Grant, do you mind me reading just like 2 short paragraphs about David Farragut?
Go ahead, man.
All right. Born near Knoxville, Tennessee, Farragut was fostered by a naval officer, David Porter, after the death of his mother. Let me go forward a little bit. Farragut served in the War of 1812 under the command of his adoptive father. He received his first command in 1824 and participated in the anti-piracy operations in the Caribbean Sea. He served in the Mexican-American War under the command of Matthew C. Perry, participating in the blockade of Tuxpan. After the war, he oversaw construction of the Mere Island Naval Shipyard, the first U.S. Navy base established on the Pacific Ocean. Though Farragut resided in Norfolk, Virginia prior to the Civil War, he was a Southern Unionist, like most people from Knoxville, by the way, and East Tennessee. It's mostly a Union area, who strongly opposed Southern secession and remained loyal to the Union after the outbreak of the Civil War, despite some doubts about Farragut's loyalty. Farragut was assigned command on an attack of an important Confederate port city of New Orleans, and after fighting past Fort St. Philip and Fort Jackson, Farragut captured New Orleans in 1862. He was promoted to Rear Admiral after the battle and helped extend Union control up along the Mississippi River, which a lot of people say broke the back of the Confederacy and like hastened the war. Participating in the siege of Port Hudson with the Union that controlled the Mississippi, Farragut led a successful attack on Mobile Bay, home of the last major Confederate port in the Gulf of Mexico. Farragut was promoted to Admiral following the Civil War and remained in active duty until his death in 1870. He's probably one of the most, besides I think there are folks who are from this area who signed the Declaration of Independence, like John Sevier. This guy is one of the American heroes from Knoxville, not just a Tennessee hero. He is an American hero. There is no reason to take his bus down. There's no reason. Oh, I mean, when we were talking about replacing Nathan Bedford Forrest, we were talking about how difficult it was to come up with obvious picks.
Well, that's the thing. Now they need 3. Now they have to. Now they're going from 1 to 3.
And this guy's not one of the options, which is super weird, I guess, because he's like one of the best. If you were going to exalt anyone as a great example of someone who's lived in this state over the past 200 years, this is one of those guys. But I just thought I should read that. He was not. He did the hardest thing. He didn't go with the rest of his state, and had to fight his own people, basically. You know, he chose to do what he thought was right, despite what Tennessee was doing, and that must have been very difficult. That's what we should all try to do: is do what's right despite what's going on around us. And there's lots of reasons to hold this guy up. I mean, we got a school named after him here in East Tennessee. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much time on this. But
I don't think
really
so, man.
Came out of left field for me, and I don't know why I'm so upset about it, but I don't know.
Well, it's because it's a distracting portion of something that we had virtual consensus on. And I say virtual consensus because it wasn't complete consensus, but it was a large portion of Tennesseans were all seemingly on the same page, at least pertaining to the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue. It had been Jonathan said in Facebook, it had been a long time coming type thing. Now, a long time coming doesn't mean much because we're talking from 78 onwards, but at least from, I don't know, man, from the stats that I've been reading, at least pertaining to about the late 80s, early 90s onwards, there was a very, very public conversation going on specifically about Nathan Bedford Forrest. Okay. So, fast forward 20 or 30 years later now, we're in where we are here in 2020. And it seems like after those last 30 years or something like that, now we've had enough conversations with other Tennesseans saying like, maybe Nathan Bedford Forrest is probably not the best representation when you walk into a building. The reasons of which we've discussed over the last 30 years, and we've come to a consensus on that. Let's move him to a museum. And now we have a situation where we're also talking about 2 other individuals. And I think what Shine's saying is, as we're having a conversation about Nathan Bedford Forrest, which we've been doing openly for a very long time, have we been having the same conversation about those 2 other individuals that are now being moved as well? And to do it in the same vote and at the same time as Nathan Bedford Forrest, in some sense, ideologically encamps all of those men together. Do you get what I'm saying? Whether that's true or not doesn't necessarily matter.
That's what I'm saying is like now David Farragut's going to be remembered like Nathan Bedford Forrest, and that's not fair. He made the right, by everyone's standards, he made the right choices. And then, kicked butt while doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Union may not have won, but for David Farragut,
And I think that's the conversation that a lot of people are having right now is, I don't know, man, as far as fairness or not is not concerned. I mean, like, technically speaking, I suppose it's left up to the State Historical Commission to make this kind of vote. But to sort of do something like this where we haven't been, in publications, I've not been reading publications about David Farragut's name for the last couple of years in this state. Since I've been on radio for sure, and since we've been doing this program, I've never once brought up Farragut's name, at least in the context, in the same sentence as Nathan Bedford Forrest. That's what I think is striking people as a little bit odd this morning, and why I led this story with, I think it's important to read the responses from our public officials that are specifically about the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue, because there's two other guys that are getting brought down now as well. And I don't know, man, like there's just no time now. You don't have time anymore to have a conversation about those guys. And the thing is, man, it's not even a conversation about them being moved now already. Apparently that decision is already made. Now there's an inevitable follow-up conversation about who to replace them with. Right. And that's exactly what Sean's saying as well. Is now we have to have it's arguably a more complex decision, because the standard has been set that David Farragut is not good enough. Again, whether this is true or not doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know. Some people are going to start having conversations. It's like, don't put anything up there anymore, or just put some philosophy, just some words or something. I don't know, some axiom up there. Maybe just
to me, this reeks of we're going to take down the Confederates, but then Thomas Jefferson, Francis Scott Key, and George Washington get taken down. To me, it's the same strategy, just happening in like a legal format, where they say it's only going to be the worst people, but it's like coming for everybody. And you can say it's like, oh, I don't think military people should be up there. I saw that, Eric, and I'm not trying to make fun of you when I say, I wasn't trying to patronize you when I did that voice, but these are people who contributed to the state being the state. And the state might not have been the state that it is right now if it wasn't for like people like Admiral David Farragut. And to me, it's perfectly reasonable to have those people up there. That's a section of life. It's not like the military doesn't exist because you don't like war. And I don't like war either. You can ask Grant, I've been anti-war my entire adult life and have voted against party because of certain stances the parties have taken on war. I've voted against both parties because they were pro-war. I don't like war either, but it's real. It happened. The Civil War happened. Wake up. 1812 happened. The Revolutionary War happened. And the people who made those choices that are a lot tougher than I'll ever be lived and did those choices despite their danger. And like we are living on their shoulders, whether you like it or not. They helped create the world we live in. It's worth remembering.
Honestly, man, I think Eric is actually in agreement with you. Eric said a second ago, by the way, and for those that are listening without watching the screen right now, he said, Eric in Facebook said, I'm in the camp that state capitol doesn't have a need for military statues. I'm sure it looks cool and noble and all, but to me, having their own spot in History Museum is actually rather honorable as well. If it's an honor they deserve, if they served as politicians and did good work in that capital, then that's different. Maybe there should be something there. He says, I agree with Shine. If they can make two, then make two and put them in both. But it's not necessary. That's all I'm saying. I think Eric was kind of in agreement with you. And in some sense, what I hear both of y'all saying at this point is like, unfortunately, the standard has been set that military folks have been in there. Okay. And now we're trying to do this weird sort of shift between and go around and whatever else. Actually, Jessica just said in Facebook a second ago, so again, keep in mind that Jessica's living in Pennsylvania. She says, so she's not, I assume she's not nearly as up to date as all these other Tennesseans are about this specific issue. But Jessica's saying from an outsider's observer's perspective, saying, so wait, 30 plus years to agree to remove a statue, then they take 3. Am I hearing that correctly? Yeah. 30 plus years to remove a single statue, and then they take 3. You're definitely hearing that correctly. That's exactly what happened last night. And Eric and I think Shine, going back to the comment a second ago, I think you're both kind of in agreement because what's basically said is, all right, so military folks in there now, that's the standard that's been set. All right, so now what we have to do is figure out a way to replace that with another person. And inevitably, whoever you replace that other person with is going to be seen as better than David Farragut was. I think that's Shine's contention as well, is now you're encamping these two people ideologically together when the whole conversation was just about Nathan Bedford Forrest. And now it has to transition to who or what do you replace them all 3 with? Like nothing at all? I mean, you could do that, by the way. Like there is a middle ground here that nobody ever really discusses. You could just like, I don't know, pave over that portion. Like you could just not replace it with anything. And I don't know if that's better.
Well, that would be the safest thing to do, and it'd probably be what they do because who likes controversy in the legislature? Nobody.
Well,
but
Dolly Parton, bro, is
there was a Knoxvillian there, and I want a Knoxvillian back there. Because I'm a Tennessean before I'm an American, and I'm a Knoxvillian before I'm a Tennessean. When it comes right down to it, I'm a localist. and I love this town, and it just makes me mad that one of our, he is recognized as a hero here. We have a school named after him. There is a bust of him at that school. There's a little plaque there outside the school to tell you about David Farragut. Everyone around here learns about David Farragut. And maybe I'm just being like a little yokel about the whole thing. And I probably am. But I don't care. That's what I'm mad about. Is there was a prominent Knoxvillian hero there, and now he's being taken away for no fault of his own. No fault of his own. Because he participated in a war against the Southerners. Because he participated in a war with the Confederates, even though he fought against them, but because it was the same war, he gets painted with the same brush. How insane of a message is that to send? It almost negates the reasoning that they're taking down Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Yeah.
If you also take down the Union people. Because it's like you're saying they're complicit because they fought in the war.
Right.
That's so weird. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, Grant. I know I'm throwing off your whole plan here for the show. You probably didn't mean to take this long on this story.
No, man. Facebook's going with it, too. Shoot, Jessica's getting involved and she's living in the state. So, if we're having people from out of state commenting on this, too, then it's got to mean something. Eric said, acting like certain events never happened is absurd, though. So he agrees with you on that there. And Jonathan, I think, is going on to say, like, it's not as if these events never happened, but it's a horrible. Yeah, it's horrible and rampant and a complete distortion of history. Eric did say, this is what I was going to finalize this entire conversation on. Like, believe it or not, for those that are listening in Tennessee, know for sure this is true. For those that are outside of the state, Dolly Parton is one of the primary names that keeps getting thrown around to replace these people with. So, I mean, as far as the conversation goes of just keeping it legislature oriented or legislators or somebody that had something to do with creating laws, keeping it to that ballpark, for lack of a better term, of people that we're going to idolize in this building, that's not exactly where the legislature is going right now either. And now that's not to say that Dolly Parton doesn't have as much of effect, if not more of an effect, in the similar way that politics would have an effect in her area in East Tennessee. Bro, let's be for real. Like, East Tennessee, all of Sevierville, probably wouldn't even be a thing without that lady. Is that too much to say? That's not too much to say, right? And like, I think
that's totally reasonable to say.
Yeah. I mean, as far as having an impact on this state, whether you pass a couple laws or you do what Dolly Parton did, let's be for real, man. Like, and this isn't even necessarily me advocating to put Dolly Parton's statue up there. All I'm saying is, if you're making a comparison of comparison's sake, come on, man. To do stuff for this state, there's not, I don't know who else you could point to that's done a lot as much as she's, well, you get what I'm saying. Go ahead.
I went to a meeting last night and saw Tim Burchett speak, and he told the story about when he met the King of Jordan. And he just walked right up to him, walked right past his security up there at the Capitol and said, "Hey, King." He said, "Hi there. Where are you from?" And he said, "Knoxville, Tennessee." And he said, "Really? Knoxville, Tennessee?" He said, "Me and my wife just love Gatlinburg."
The King of Jordan.
The King of Jordan.
All right.
So, well, and I can tell you right now, the King of Jordan wouldn't know where Gatlinburg was if it wasn't for Dolly Parton, even though Dolly World is not it's in Pigeon Forge, not Gatlinburg. But you know what I'm saying? Like, the reason the King of Jordan knows about Gatlinburg is because of Dolly Parton.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Hey, by the way, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. I got the unified chat up here. If you're in Facebook or if you're in Twitch, or it doesn't matter where you're commenting from, I'll be able to see your comments over there so we can interact with you. Let me make a hard transition here. Last couple minutes of the show we have here, last 20 minutes of the show, rather. Sean, if you could scroll all the way down to the Supreme Court updates. And honestly, y'all, like, I may get to this Don Lemon thing in the headlines here. Don Lemon's literal heresy. Just so I don't hide that ball, because it's just like, it's going to get me too down if I really just go ham on it this morning. I just don't have the energy for it. Here's the quote. Don Lemon straight up said last night that, like, Jesus Christ, he said that that's who you believe in. Jesus Christ admittedly was not perfect when he was here on this earth. So why are we deifying the founders of this country? I didn't watch the whole context clip of beginning to end to figure out why he was analogizing the perfection of Christ or lack thereof to deification of founders in this country. I didn't pretend to understand that, nor do I necessarily care. But Chris Cuomo was sitting beside Don Lemon, and I don't know if either one of these guys are professed Christians or not. I didn't even look that up either. But somebody somewhere, producer or otherwise, somebody in that room that has casually stumbled across the Bible at some point in their lives, being in America, I presume would have to know that is actual literal heresy that's being spoken on CNN now. And this is just a purely objective statement. And again, I don't want to focus on this too long here. I really don't. Because y'all know where I'm coming from, man. I used to be in children's ministry prior to doing this stuff. Before I went to law school, I was in children's ministry. This guy that married me and my wife, one of our seminary professors, he's the one that convinced me to go to law school. I believe what I'm doing now is portion of my calling to bring liberty and truth and freedom back into politics. All right, now I believe it comes from a creator. This is my personal thing, though, right? So y'all know this. I would get upset about something like this. But Chris Cuomo's sitting there just sort of nodding his head along beside Don Lemon, man, just like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Christ wasn't a perfect man. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I don't want to pull it up, bring it up more than this now is because I could see myself very easily delving into something of like, dude, this is going to be a marking of beginning of just like casually slipping out just straight up heretical statements there, and just like nobody calling him on it, nobody calling anybody on it. And the longer we just sort of like delve into it, no one's asking you to be a Christian right now, Don Lemon, especially not on CNN. But the point I'm making is if nobody gets to the point of holding some of these folks accountable in a public manner, then especially if other Christians are not doing it, then bro, what are we believing in? Are we just like a philosophy club? I'm looking at 86 different verses right now that say the exact opposite of what Don Lemon said. And in an objective philosophical sense, by way of presenting a syllogism, A plus B equals C, Don Lemon is objectively incorrect. It is a heretical statement. That is to say that it is antithetical to the entire premise of the Bible. This is not me presenting Christianity to you necessarily. This isn't even me trying to make an argument. This is me just showing straight up. You don't have to believe in Christ to understand what I'm saying. Hear me here. You don't have to believe in Christ to understand what I'm saying. That if you operate within the realm, philosophically speaking, if you operate within the realm of what is in the text of the Bible, Don Lemon said something that was not within the text of the Bible that he said was actually in the text of the Bible, and nobody called him on it. Nobody called him on it. Now, that may not be an amazing thing for y'all. It may not be an amazing thing for y'all. But if you step back for a second and understand, I don't understand sometimes, and I know, man, like, go with me for a second. I have a lot of agnostic friends, and I have a lot of atheist friends. And most of them are not evangelical about their atheism, not even that that's necessarily a problem. But I do have one in particular, one friend who's sort of casually just sort of shakes off the effect that Christianity has had on this earth for the last couple thousand years. So follow me in this thought train for just a second here, okay? I don't see how someone could so casually just do away with the influence that a particular philosophy, a particular worldview has had on the entirety of our species. That, to me, seems either intellectually dishonest or naive. And I think people that follow me understand what I'm saying. You don't have to believe in Christ to understand the impact that that last name has made on this earth. Get me, right? You don't have to understand or follow me in my spiritual beliefs necessarily to understand that the most widely read text in all of human history is this book that Don Lemon was talking about last night. There's not a single book that anybody else can point to that has sold more copies than this book that Don Lemon was talking about last night. It is the most read text that everybody should have at least some basic understanding of, especially in first world right now. Now, he comes out and says that this guy Christ that we know of, it's not like he led a perfect life. And I'm looking at no less than 86 verses right now that tell me the exact opposite. Just so y'all know, I'm not trying to preach at anybody here, and I know it's becoming that, but whatever. 1 Peter 2:22, he committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. Matthew 5:48, you therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. 1 John 3:5, you know that he appeared to take away sins, and in him there was no sin. 2 Corinthians 5:21, for our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. 1 Peter 1:19, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb, without blemish or spot. Bro, I could go on for 84 more of these if you really wanted me to.
And he's really taken a verse out of context, because I've heard people have done this to me, and I think there's two other versions of this verse, but I pulled up Mark 10:18, and this is when the rich young ruler comes to him, and Jesus said to him, why callest thou, and I'm using KJV because most people believe in the KJV, right? Jesus said to him, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. And obviously later on in the Gospels, he claims to be Son of God, or part of the Trinity, basically, those kind of things. But it's not he didn't necessarily say that. He said, why are you calling me good? Let's keep the focus on why I'm here, kind of thing. Or, you know what I mean? That's a teaching moment. He wasn't admitting that he wasn't perfect or wasn't saying that he wasn't good. He's like, he's teaching this guy about getting to the kingdom, and it's taken out of context and not read in context. It's just they take that one thing and take it out of context. But what about the rest of what he said, Grant? Why are we deifying these founders?
All right.
Which is a somewhat fair critique. That part of it is somewhat fair. But my question would be, like, why does he deify LeBron James? Like, why does he deify Beyonce and Jay-Z and President Obama and Nancy Pelosi? Why does he deify some of these people? And there's a big question there that ties in with even the last conversation we had about busts and statues and who do we remember? Who do we exalt? Who do we point to and say these are good examples of cultural archetypes in our culture? If you be like them, you'll be successful or you'll be good. These are important conversations to have, and we will be having them because we're taking down some of those people, and they're going to be replaced because this is what humans do. This is what and I would say we deify these people, and I wouldn't say we deify them, we exalt them to a point, and not even as people, but as archetypes of good choices, because that's what humans do. And if we don't exalt these people, if we let you exalt certain people, you'll exalt ones that if people copy, it will destroy our culture and spread mental disease. That's why. That's why we pick certain people. And we're having conversations about that. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there as part of it. And to say, like, he is pointing to something, but he's doing it unfairly. And that's a great story there in Mark 10 about the teaching the rich young ruler about how to get to the kingdom. But it is unfair. But he is pulling from somewhere, because people have done this to me before in person.
But I will say, though, man, like, overall, there is no way that anyone can make the reasonable argument that as far as the presentation of Christianity goes, that Christ himself was not a perfect entity. The larger point that I'm making here is that political commentary has now delved so far into the realm of just speaking blatant untruth that nobody ever calls them on anymore, that it's just like, well, why don't we just bring up like literally everything now? This is Don Lemon's exact quote. Jesus Christ, if that's who you believe in, Jesus Christ admittedly was not a perfect person when he was here on this earth. That is an objectively, demonstrably untrue statement, at least as far as the way that he presented that. To say that Christians do not believe that Jesus Christ was a perfect God-man is a demonstrably untrue statement on itself, itself.
It's BS, right? To say such a thing. No one believes that.
And you don't even have to, again, what I'm saying is, like, you don't have to believe in Christ to follow the logic of what I'm saying. That is not a prerequisite for understanding the syllogism. It is not a prerequisite to believe in like, the metaphysical claims that Christ was a God-man, to understand that Christians believe that. And if Don Lemon comes out and says that Christians do not believe that, that is a demonstrably untrue statement. And the power to be able to do something with that kind of demonstrably untrue statement is something that the fact that nobody's been able to call him on this at his own network right now is, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a little bit too much for me. It's just a little bit too much for me right now. And this is I'm totally willing to admit my bias in this, which is not a problem. Jessica said in Facebook, by the way, he should have been called out, saying if you're speaking on any religion, you should speak on that religion correctly always. 100%, man. 100%. And frankly speaking, is why I give Sam Harris a lot of credit. Sam Harris is an atheist. Sam Harris is actually one of my brother's professors at the University of Chapel Hill. Sam Harris gives full credit, though, to the exact text as they're being spoken. He doesn't believe, but he doesn't take things out of context either. Eric said in Don's defense, he probably thinks the Da Vinci Code is a documentary. Well, I hear that. Jonathan said, who's a Christian that even watches him? I thought we all watched Fox. Well, he put a laughing emoji after that, but I hear where he's coming from, right? Kelly said, Don Lemon's an absolute idiot. Yeah, and then Jessica said, isn't a big part of Christianity that Jesus was Son of God, was perfect? Yes, exactly.
It's part of the syllogism. Otherwise, the sacrifice, the thing that everyone calls everyone to pay attention to, would be less meaningful.
Right.
I mean, it's all part of the syllogism. It's what makes it make sense.
In the realm of Christianity, though, then that's also, I've got to be totally honest with y'all, that's a lot of what leads my worldview in politics as well, is an aspect of servitude, right? I mean, the way that Christianity presents the entire thing is that everyone thought that this massive king was going to come. He was going to take over everything. He was going to reign supreme, but he came and did the exact opposite of that. He served. He sacrificed. He laid his life down, as other Christians are supposed to be called to do so. Now, we drop that ball every single day, and I think we've been dropping that ball larger recently than ever. But I'm telling you, man, like in a political sense, man, that's why I think I come on this program a lot, Sean, and everyone else, and present this idea of like, dude, if you truly want to change someone's mindset, if you want to get that those underlying of the presuppositions that drive people, if no one's listening to facts anymore, I really think the way that you do it, that's why I keep drawing back to this Christ example. I think the way you do it is by serving other human beings, by sacrificing something of yourself unto another human being. I think that is the only thing that's ever really spoken in a revolutionary way throughout all of human history. And frankly speaking, I think it's the only thing that's going to speak to that again going forward, right? Now, again, I don't know, man. I think the model has been set, and it drives a lot of the reasons why I do what I do, man. You cannot find or hope for a win out of this. The sole purpose always has to be for the betterment of someone other than you. It always has to be that, as far as I'm concerned. But I heard you jumping in there, Sean.
Well, I want to answer his question again. I'm going to try one quick more stab at answering it with like Jesus. This is his quote: "Jesus Christ, if that's who you believe in, Jesus Christ admittedly was not perfect when he was here on this earth. So why are we deifying the founders of this country?" You just mentioned everyone thought Jesus was going to come in and be a king, according to the narrative, according to the story, and it's a good story. And he chose not to be that kind of king, but to lead some kind of different, new, upside-down kingdom where the first will be last and the last shall be first, and decided not to take an earthly crown. So part of the reason we exalt someone like George Washington is he exemplified that behavior. He could have been a king. Okay? Everyone was begging him to be a king. And he went back, he served his country, and then went back to his farm and later on died there. So, like, part of the reason we exalt, or he says deify, we exalt people who exemplify the characteristics of Christ that are more tangible and people that we can remember and that are tied to our culture so that we can exemplify those same things. I've told several people who've complained to me about George Washington that they aren't worthy to shine his shoes because they will never get such a choice to be king over a brand new empire. And then refuse it.
Yeah.
You'll never get that choice because you're not a good enough person to even get that choice. You couldn't shine George Washington's shoes and do it without feeling bad about yourself. But that's the reason we exalt certain people. I mean, George Washington is one of the best examples because he exemplified that same behavior. He could have been king, just like Jesus, but chose to do what is better for his fellow man. Because he knew that heretical dictatorship is not a good thing. He just kicked King George's rear end, so he didn't want to do that.
I was going to be able to logically convince Don Lemon into the understanding that the Christ never committed a sin. Kierkegaard was a philosopher, unless someone's going to correct me, which go ahead, but I'm pretty sure he was the guy that said, yes, you can rationally convince your way into Christianity. I personally don't believe that's how it is. We may have just got shut down on Facebook, but I'm sure we're still going on YouTube here. Sean, are you still with me, by the way? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good deal, man. And look, I know I started this whole rant off, by the way, of saying that I wasn't going to go hard in the Don Lemon thing, but whatever, man. It's we're here now. The last thing I just want to say about that, though, again, is it wasn't so much that Don Lemon was speaking heresy. If he doesn't consider himself as a Christian, then I don't expect him to be able to speak Christian truths. That's another thing about the Christian religion that we follow is like, yeah, iron's supposed to sharpen iron and you're supposed to hold other Christians accountable. But as far as a judging capacity is concerned, it's not necessarily meant to be levied out at non-Christians. I mean, check the plank in your own eye, right? The main problem that I had with what Don Lemon was doing is that he was making a statement on behalf of other Christians. And it was just a blatantly untrue statement. And in making a blatantly untrue statement, I'm sure there's a few people that were watching that program that thought to themselves like, yeah, man, this whole servant attitude of doing for the least of these, of literally living for something better, for somebody else, to bring something into a better kingdom than we have right now. And I don't know, man, I'm just sure that lukewarm presentation chipped away at some of that for somebody else. Hey, finalizing the program here in the next 5 minutes that we have. I'll pull up this unified chat again, see if I can get some of this stuff going. Eric says, oh, yeah, we already just went through some of that stuff. Let me just hit the last couple of Supreme Court cases here that just happened over the last week. We won't have much to go into much about detail about much of these other than just to bring them up and let you guys know. The Supreme Court of the United States, it says SCOTUS updates down there in the show notes. Again, every single day, linked at the top of the show here. Click the Evernote link, go down to the show notes. You'll see there SCOTUS updates. Here's a bunch of them. Now, oddly enough, I threw Trump, this headline in here from Politico. It says Trump threatens to cut federal funds from schools that don't reopen. I threw that in there just to like a big signal warning, like just beware. It's not going to happen soon because I'm pretty sure we've already wrapped up Supreme Court for this session. But, you know, that would inevitably become a Supreme Court case. I'm fairly certain as far as the executive power to be able to fund or not fund or whatever else, right? Just be aware that that's the thing that Trump is threatening. The Political article walks you through that, saying, like, if you guys don't reopening, I'm going to withhold federal funding so you can figure out how to fund it yourself. We also have another one on faithless, Supreme Court rules on faithless electors. Now, I'm fairly certain that was a 9-0 decision that basically said, like, dude, you can't just, like, go in there as an elector and vote whoever you want to. I mean, however your state votes is how you got to vote, too, all right? Like, Sharon, what did you say before we started the program? This was like basically 50 mini elections that do the thing, 50 statewide elections that...
We don't have federal elections. We have 50 separate state elections. So how your electors would be chosen would have nothing to do with elections in other states. And I think that's probably how they looked at it. I didn't read the decision, but that is the reality of the system. So unless we federalize elections, it doesn't make any sense for electors in Michigan to say because the overall popular vote went to some person that we should put our electoral votes towards that person. That doesn't make any sense.
Because in 2016, I think, don't quote me the number here, y'all, but in 2016, I'm pretty sure there was like 6 or 7, maybe as high as 8, somewhere between that number, single digit, I'm pretty sure. But there was some single digit number of electors that came in there and just voted completely opposite, or maybe they just didn't vote or something. I forget what the story was, but that's one of the reasons why some of the stuff was brought up is, you know, some of the states do have laws on the books that say like our electors have to vote with what the state actually votes for as well. Now, not every state has that, but the states that do, this basically upheld those states and said like, dude, you can't have faithless electors. Another very interesting thing that's coming out of this Reason headline, I just want to draw your attention to as well. There was a Title VII ruling last week or the week before that basically indicated that you cannot discriminate against a person based on their sexual orientation. And out of that decision, it was Gorsuch that wrote the majority opinion on that. And his reasoning for that was, you know, listen, man, sex discrimination is already a thing in Title VII that you cannot do. And in some sense, you are discriminating based upon a person's sex due to their sexual orientation. Because if it was a man attracted to a woman, you wouldn't have a problem with that. But specifically based upon the sex of a man attracted to a man, you do have a problem with that. So it's not about sexual orientation. It's about the sex discrimination based upon the sex itself. All that just to bring you up to speed that what ended up happening out of that ruling is in Harvard, they had this situation going on where they wanted to shut down sororities and fraternities because they wanted to be more inclusive for everybody. They didn't like the idea that you could segregate based upon sex. So it's just like sororities and fraternities were no longer a thing anywhere. Well, because of this ruling now in the Supreme Court, what Harvard was doing was discrimination based solely upon sex. So because of that Supreme Court ruling, Harvard is now having a thing saying that, like, you know, here's this headline, Reason's headline, Supreme Court LGBT discrimination ruling forces Harvard to end ban on single-gender clubs, any single-gender clubs, but primarily fraternities and sororities, sex-based fraternities and sororities. So, which I don't know any other way to say that. 3 other headlines here that I just want to draw your attention to. Supreme Court undercut access to birth control under Obamacare. Kind of, sort of, not really. Check the NPR article out. It does an okay job of giving you an objective presentation. U.S. Supreme Court deems half of Oklahoma a Native American reservation. That is a massively interesting decision. Half of Oklahoma is a Native American reservation. Now, that's a true story, sort of, again, pertaining to criminal legislation, criminal liability, I suppose. Supreme Court says the Manhattan DA can get Trump's tax records, but rejects bid to let House Democrats look at it. So the story behind this is like, all right, so we're just waiting for somebody to leak them then. So an attorney that's looking into something about payoffs from Stormy Daniels or something like that, the attorney can look at Trump's tax records, but the House Democrats can't. So the fill in the blank there, it's like, all right, so it's just a matter of time until somebody leaks that stuff then. Is that
important context, though? He did just fire the Manhattan DA.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hey, and the last thing I'll say is oyez.org, OYEZ, oye.org. If you want to follow up with some of these Supreme Court state cases, I would highly recommend that website. Is probably the best to get the actual breakdown. Literally no bias. There is no such thing as bias on that website, at least as far as pertains to the oral arguments and everything else. It just breaks down the facts of the case, the ruling, all that other stuff. Hey, it's 10 p.m. on the dot. We got to get out of here a little bit early today. Love all y'all for watching. Sincerely, my name is Mr. Henry David Shine Thompson. Signing off now. We'll be back Monday doing it big.